Hello, I'm W.T. Edmonson and welcome to Focus. Freedom often causes unbelievable silence. Our guest today is Mr. Joe Johnson. He's the president and CEO of the Telein Group, Inc., and he's also the 2013 Lincoln University Commencement Speaker. On behalf of Focus, JCTV, and the citizens of Jefferson City, welcome. Mr. Johnson holds an honorary doctorate of law from Lincoln University, a Master of Science in Education Administration, and a Bachelor of Science in Education from Lincoln University. Joe, thank you for accepting our invitation to come on to JCTV. I realize that you're in the city for a particular purpose, but in that you are in the city, we wanted to take the time and give an opportunity for you to share a little bit of your knowledge and expertise that you've gained over the years. And of course, we both beloved our institution, Lincoln University. So before we get into the deep questions that I have for you, who is Joe Johnson as a result of your having attended Lincoln University?
Well, first of all, it is indeed a pleasure to be here with you, and an honor to be asked to appear on TV, and feel blessed that someone thinks that I have a few words to share that may be of value to someone. So thank you, WT, and also I thank you, JCTV. Who is Joe Johnson? I think Joe Johnson, who attended Lincoln University, is still the Joe Johnson from Poplar Bluff, Missouri. I'm the youngest of 12 children, and I am also married for 44 years and 2 lovely daughters, and feel blessed and honored to be here. I think Lincoln University simply, I think our life is about nature and nurture, and Lincoln has been a nurturing environment that brought out more in me, the son of a minister, and so therefore I think that Lincoln nurtured some of the things that my father and mother put in me. My father used to say, train the child in the way it should go, and when they get old, they will not depart from it. So I'm the same person.
Okay. How did you happen to decide to venture to Lincoln University?
I think it seems like it was one of those things that there's no coincidences I've heard most recently. And it so happens that in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, I came to understand later on that just about 90% of the teachers were from Lincoln University. Mm-hmm. And I didn't appreciate that when I was growing up. But one person who was the principal of the school was a passionate Lincolnite, and he and his wife both. His name was Charles E. Coursey. And both graduates, as I said, both received honorary doctorates here at Lincoln University, both deceased now. But I thought that they represented something special, passionate interest in students. Small, I thought at first, I don't want to go to a small school. I want to go to a bigger school. But I believe that the blessing that I had was I ended up at Lincoln University. And it so happens that when I graduated, I received a curator scholarship. And it was from an anonymous donor, I'm sure it was Mr. Coursey. But that was winning something. I never won a scholarship, so I thought that was big. So I was excited to come, but I found that I was destined to be here. So I'm just appreciative. And I go back and all the special teachers that I remember, and it seemed like I remember all of them in my, from grade to middle school to high school, they were Lincolnites.
I had Alfred Harris. He is the president of the National Alumni Association on the program last year. And I asked him a question, and in sharing the response to that question, I received a history lesson. And so I asked you basically the same question. Were you here during the time of the Lincoln University riot? And what experience did attending Lincoln University in the 1960s do for you?
Yeah. Well, I think I was here. It so happens that I finished my bachelor's degree in 1968, and then I was here for 1969, which was in time for the riot. So I was here when Martin Luther King was killed, and I stayed over in graduate school. And Lincoln was representative of society as a whole. We were going through turbulent times, the Vietnam War, and also as well there was Kent State, there was Jackson State, there was sit-ins and protests, and Lincoln was simply I think a microcosm of that, although we weren't as involved and as much of an activist as, and I think that was as others had been. And I think that was just a product of being the historically black college in the Midwest, the more conservative. People were, I think, just somewhat reluctant. We had professors here that also we had a lot of respect for. They were our elders. I say that lightly now because I'm now older than most of my professors were when I was there. But so I think that there was a calming effect, but then it broke loose. And I think that's just the nature of people coming in from different places and bringing new thoughts and ideas. But it was an incredible experience. I think the diversity of Lincoln was preparation for us, and it was historically black college at Jackson State did not have close to 50% white students, and so I think that was part of our education and part of our development for the world to come. And so I think we were indicative of the times, but in some ways prepared better for that time because of this precious heel that we sit on.
Having gone to Lincoln University, how prepared did you feel you were upon graduation to enter the real world, the world of work?
More prepared than I thought I was. I was reluctant. One of the things, having grown up in primarily a segregated school, one of the things those teachers from Lincoln University said is you can't go out in this world this way, and you got to be this, and you got to be better, and you got to be those things. So I think they instilled the fear in us about we need to work hard, we need to be ready, and the world out there was not going to be just waiting for you. And I think it worked. And so when I went out, I found that I was more prepared than I thought, and that's in retrospect. I didn't take it lightly, but I thought that the experience of being in a diverse environment, I think the experience of getting to know yourself better. I think one of the powers of historically black colleges has been that I think anthropologists say if you know yourself, you'll be better prepared for the real world, whoever you are. And in some ways, the historically black colleges are the ones that help us to know ourselves. So we were more confident going out in the world. We weren't worrying about the world as much as we knew who we were. And I think knowing that is the key to entering the world. And I thought Lincoln University taught me who I was.
Upon graduation, did you enter the military directly upon graduation?
It had a little different experience. I graduated in 1968. I was commissioned as an officer in military intelligence in the Army. And they gave me a 2-year delay to get my master's. And, somehow I decided I would go to work in Chicago during the summer before that. But I was fortunate to get this 2-year delay, whereas most of my buddies went straight in. And what happened is that, so I had my reporting orders in 1970. Well, I came back and I somehow figured out how to get a master's in 1 year. And after getting a master's in 1 year, I still had 1 year left to either tell the service I'm ready to come in, or maybe I'll try something else. I majored in education, but I learned more about the world of business. In 1960s, the world kind of began to open its doors somewhat to black students, black graduates, and so forth. So I thought I would test it. And I went and worked a year, and then I went in service. And lo and behold, I found out that if you had a job before you went in service, they had to keep the job for you when you came out of service. So I thought I would work a year, come out, go to teaching, because I still had a passion for teaching, I thought. And I'll maybe speak about that. But what happened is I went and tried business, and I fell in love with it, and I went into service, and then I came out and went straight back to business.
So, as I have spoken with other graduates of Lincoln University, some of them indicated that they were somewhat reluctant, hesitant entering the workplace because there was this apprehension of being prepared. But once they got in, they realized that they were as prepared as anyone else. And so you're talking about universities being able to ingrain in you who you really are and your capabilities. That means a tremendous amount to a student, especially a student who was a first-time graduate from their family.
And I think that that's a big thing. And I actually, of the 12, I was the second to graduate from college. But and so that was an unbelievable experience. But I'll tell you something else. I talk about coincidences, and I've been reading a book about, God's winks at us. It so happens that I majored in education and got a master's in education administration, but I went into business, and I never had a business course. And so I went in, some real reluctant, and wanted to understand this complex thing. And it so happens that General Mills took a chance on me. It's what the corporation used to say. And I was the first African-American job analyst in the history of General Mills. In 1969, and I went there in August of 1969 after I got my master's. And I didn't know about business. But talk about coincidences. I went there, and my boss told me the first day, there's someone here from your school. So right away, I assumed that he must be talking about Lincoln University in Pennsylvania or something, but I don't know anyone from Lincoln. And it so happens the person, his name is Henry Helm, who was a graduate of Lincoln, and he graduated in '64, the year I came. And so he was already working there. And so I met Henry Helm on the first day, and that was a positive sign, that says, and I remember Henry Helm said to me right away, Joe, this is not nearly as tough as they told us it was. And that was what I needed to hear. And so he told me about, how to learn and work and so forth and so on. And that was the rest was history, I'll say.
Okay. Lincoln University has a number of graduates who went through ROTC and really propel themselves throughout the organization. What was the military like for you?
I think there's something to this idea. I found that when I was ultimately in Xerox and later on was fortunate enough to become a vice president, I found that most of the African Americans who became vice presidents had gone through ROTC, and they had been officers in service. Now, these were the early ones, and so there's something that happens there. For me, I thought it was the idea of being able to, at 23 years old, I had the responsibility of 75 men that that I was leading. Now, where else were you going to get that? And this was, I went in during the Vietnam era, but fortunately, because I had the 2-year delay to get in the military, I did not go to Vietnam. And whereas all my buddies seemed that they had that experience. And so what happened is, though, but I did remember preparing that I've got to go here and I'm leading these people. Now, it so happens that all 75 of them were white. And so here I am coming from this school. Now, so what, ROTC, down on the football field, all of that kind of, prepared me because we had a diverse student body. But it was still a little bit, I had some reticence about it, but I found that it gave me an incredible ability to learn about what leadership really was. And I think it helped me as I moved throughout my life work.
How long was it before you returned to Lincoln University after leaving?
Well, it seemed like I've had a love affair with Lincoln ever since the first day I came here. I came here and during my first day of freshman orientation during the summer of 1964. And the first day of freshman orientation, I met my wife, Julie Hamilton Johnson. And so she had grown up, born and raised here. Her father worked at the university for 32 years. And it so happens I also met my best buddy, Victor Pasley, who was also a Lincoln graduate and best man in my weather. He was from Fulton. He knew Julie growing up. We were staying in the dorm, and he says, none of us knew kind of what to do in freshman orientation. He said, I know a lady that has a car. And it was Julie. She had a parents' car. And so I met Julie then, and so I've been around. So we started dating in our junior year, but friends right away. And so even when I went away, I always had a reason to come back to Jeff City because my in-laws were here. And I also, it didn't take me long to start, I started coming back to homecoming right away. It was fortunate.
Having attended Lincoln University as a student, and then coming back upon graduation and so forth, you had somewhat of an experience that some may not have had, in that you had a relationship with Jefferson City outside the campus. What was Jefferson City like when you were here as a student?
I think it was beginning to change. And I thought that it still was, you kind of felt there was Jeff City and there's Lincoln. I heard people used to joke and says, the prison on one hill and Lincoln's on the other, and then there's Jeff City. But I thought it was more open than the city I grew up in, Poplar Bluff, Missouri, in terms of racial integration around the city. But I thought it was just beginning the process of change. There was, and I thought it had a lot more opportunity. Being a capital city, always was wondering why not the city capitalize on this enormous asset. And so that's what I found. And I think now I'm beginning to see it has begun to capitalize on the asset. And I think there's more to be done in terms of integration. The key to abundance in our lives or in organizations or in cities, the key is to integrate. And I think that Jeff City, and I don't mean just racial integration, I mean integration of a way of thinking, seeing something as a part of the whole, just like we do in our bodies and our lives. And I still think there's great opportunity for Lincoln to think in a more abundant way, more integrated way, and I think also for the city to think in a more integrated way.
Okay. Let's talk about your professional career. You've worked in a number of major corporations. Tell us a little bit about some of those experiences that you experienced and encountered. entering into major corporations coming right out of the 60s, where the corporation were also in a learning mode of integration and so forth.
Yeah, again, I think that one of the blessings was Lincoln University, my experience there, ROTC, being in the Army, and so I felt in some ways really prepared for the corporation. I didn't see it as a place that I was, afraid to step out in, because the military, if you're going to step out anywhere, you're going to be there, and so I felt probably more prepared, and I think I just learned how to learn, and that was the key from Wheatley School in Poplar Bluff to Lincoln University, in a master's degree as well in the military. I just learned how to learn, and that's really what it's about. And I found I was able to navigate my way through, in some ways, better than some of my white counterparts. They were struggling more with who I was than I was. And while they were focusing on me, I was focusing on getting ahead. Oh. And so I was fortunate able to do that.
You indicated something here that I've heard in a number of different ways, but you learn how to learn. Coming out of small town, Haytime, Missouri, down in the Boot Hill, which is a different kind of place.
Yes, sir.
But coming out of that environment, I was the first to go to college. And so I was very reluctant, very apprehensive about my ability. And so early on, I found out that one of my biggest problems were I did not really know how to study.
Right, absolutely.
And so when you say learn how to learn, that really hit a core for me, because it does. And I think that's a situation where a number of students find difficulties.
That's exactly right.
Especially coming out of some schools where they don't have the resources. Their parents may not have the ability to do what they need to do as far as teaching them how to go about the educational process.
Right. Well, I think it is. I talked about being in this special place, and I called it as special because it was Wheatley School, teachers from Lincoln University. And in some ways preparing me for what? Lincoln University. Right. And so I found that they were tough. They were challenging about learning. And in fact, I may speak a little bit about this in my speech on this Saturday. But I was born in Poplar Bluff, but I lived in a town called Neelyville, Missouri, which is in the country. And so it happens that my birthday is in the end of October. And what happened is that when I went to school, I had to wait a year, but when I went to school, they put me in the second grade because they thought I was already ready for the second grade. Now, after I'd been there for 60 days, we moved to Poplar Bluff, to the city, all right? And so I go to this second grade classroom, and I found myself struggling, not paying attention, so forth. Another Lincolnite, Miss Muriel Diggs, who I'd probably say is the best teacher that could ever be for anyone. I remember one day, she came to me, and she said, "Come here, young man. I'm taking you to a new room." And so I was kind of excited. She recognized me. She took me up. She walked me back to the first grade room, all right? And she said, "This is going to be your new room. And I think you'll work well in here." Now, what happened is, you've heard of being held back. Well, I was put back, all right? But let me tell you, what a great learning.
Yeah.
What a great learning. Because, first of all, I felt like I got promoted. I didn't realize that she was taking me back. And I felt more comfortable immediately in the room. Now, she picked that out. Now, the part I may talk about is, until she passed away, she always said to me when I came home, "Come here, young man." And she would stop me and she said, "See this young man? If I hadn't put him back, he wouldn't be where he is today." And guess what? She was telling the truth.
Yeah.
But learn how to learn, I understood from first grade, all right, you need to know how to learn, and you need to be ready. And so that was, in retrospect, that was just one of those blessings that happened to me.
Yeah. Well, you know, your story is so much like mine. We moved from Arkansas to Hayti, Missouri. No, well, it was Bragg City.
Yeah.
Now, when I got to Bragg City, entered the school, some of the first graders were reading. Arkansas, first graders weren't reading. Mrs. Terry said, you need to go to that table. So she was putting me back.
Yeah. We had something coming, don't we?
She was putting me back.
Right.
And, you know, I also say that was an experience. I did not really understand what was happening, but it was an experience.
Right.
And I think it prepared me because I was 1 year older.
That's right.
And but you know, those type things happen, and sometimes it happens because people who really have an interest in you make that decision that sometimes individual may be reluctant to make had they not cared for you.
And I just want to build on that, Deputy. I think it's so true, and often, you know, we hear the term often, in order to make a bigger leap forward, we have to take a step back. And I feel like being put back in the first grade was the foundation I need to be blessed to be where I am today. But I had to learn something. She wanted me to learn early that you got to get it. And I think that attitude just carried all the way through, whether I was in school or working or in the military. It was, hey, you got to learn it.
Yeah.
You got to learn it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You touched on something. You spoke about abundance. You founded the Telein Group Corporation based out of Los Angeles, California. Well, you serve as president and CEO. Now, your organization has clients in various parts of the country, and I also understand South Africa. Is that correct?
Right.
What is the nature of your organization? What's the purpose of your organization?
Well, my purpose is an organization that focuses on leadership and organizational change. You know, that I told you about getting early leadership experience. And in fact, I talked about ROTC, but I'll go back and talk about my fraternity, my class. You know, I was able to be a class officer, student body on the student government body. So I got some leadership experience. And I also, remember, I didn't have business education, but I became a student of leadership. How does it really work? So when I went in, I didn't have the business degree, but I had this idea that if I learn how this thing works, then I can probably be successful here. And learning how it worked was really learning how leadership worked and how organizations really work. Some people were trained by the book. I found that I had this curiosity training, and it was always about how to get more done through people. And I thought organizations, and I still do today, do not focus on getting the most out of their people. So my organization focuses on really the idea of leadership for abundance.
Okay. Hold it right there. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.